It's now 5 p.m. The work session of the City Council of the City of Trinidad will now come to order. We are on a Zoom meeting, and we have, looks like 4 items to discuss. Item 1 is discussion regarding parking of recreational vehicles. Item 2 is nonprofit funding. Item 3 is discussion regarding new MED rule that allows walk-up and drive-up window service. Item 4, discussion of a memorandum of understanding with the Trust for Public Lands regarding GOCO grant for Fisher's Peak planning. And of course 5, if there are, item 4, actually it's 5. If there's any other items that the council wants to consider for future work sessions. So let's go ahead and get started with item 1, a discussion regarding parking of recreational vehicles. Mr. Valentine, do you want to lead this, please?
Sure, Mayor. I'll introduce a little bit, but I believe we have Sergeant Tony Haddo online and Chief Glorioso to explain this a little further. But we've been having some issues with campers and vehicles, recreational vehicles and boats that are parking everywhere within the city limits. And what this ordinance does is it gives Sergeant Haddo the tool to actually go and have a little more meat to it. So I don't think it creates more work. It just gives them a better tool. So I don't know if Charlie or Tony want to jump in here, explain what's going on.
Yeah, I can. We just, we looked at the old ordinance and it just needed a little fine tuning, I think, because we're targeting everybody instead of the people where we want to get these junky, half torn up trailers out, and people are usually drug users and selling drugs and everything else. I think that's what the scope of what we wanted to target. And with the few changes that we've made, I think that'll give us to go after those people and leave alone the people that have a trailer that's hunting that just happens to be in their backyard and like that. I think that fine tune would help. I can get rid of the trailers a lot easier, the ones we're after. So I talked to Audra about it, and we kind of came up with these with the changes that you see there.
That was Sergeant Haddo, for the record. I know everyone knows that, just so you know.
Yeah, it says Donna on there. So if I say anything bad, blame Donna.
Yeah.
She signed me up for this. I'm not used to this. So.
Your voice is so deep, Donna. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she's got a little cold.
Yeah.
Glorioso, do you have anything to add, please?
No, I just think this is a necessary tool. This is one of our big problems. And like Tony says, we then in turn have people using them and occupying them, and then they do become a target for drug activity as well. So this would give us some strength, and more importantly would help us move more quickly on this growing problem.
Okay, let's go ahead and get some questions if there's any from...
I have one, Phil.
Go ahead, and I'm going to start with... go ahead, Mr. DeBona. We'll get started with you. Then
Charlie, Tony, thank you for joining us here on the Zoom. Okay, most recreational vehicles include what? Motorhomes, trailers, campers, converted trucks or buses, boats, boat trailers, and all-terrain vehicles, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so in most cities, you pretty much have to be parked on a cement slab. So anything that doesn't qualify under that type of jurisdiction is going to be removed, or does there have to be a warning and then a ticketed and then a court appearance, or how does that work?
That's what we were getting away from, having to have them on a cement slab and all that. Basically what we want to do is say that they have to be registered to where they're parked, and there has to be a house on the property with it that is legal to live in, with utilities and all that stuff. That way we don't have to go after people that are having hunting trailers that just parked in the back that are covered. So we're just kind of changing it up a little bit where we can go after the trailers that are really eyesores. And because there's people, I know one guy that's happens to be his trailer is registered to this person. He has cancer. He's living next to his daughter out in a trailer. We don't want to go after those people. We want to go after the people that are, most of them don't even own the trailers. And so we want to go after those.
Even the ones that encroach, let's say, sidewalk or public streets?
Yeah, that of course we can do that. That's, we'll leave that in there. They still have to be parked, back from that and all that. Well, I know a couple of them that are covered, that people just use them occasionally. So we don't go after those people, just the bad ones. Basically.
Thank you, Tony.
Sure.
Ms. Grego?
Just have a question. I've noticed a couple of these trailers, campers parked on the street, even though they're registered and legal. There's a bunch of weeds underneath the vehicle, which kind of indicates that they're not being used or moved. Is there anything we can do about those, Tony, or not so much?
Well, if they're parked on the street, they only have 48 hours, and then some people will move them. But if they're parked on the street, we can get rid of them. The weeds underneath them, that would be a weed issue. So I could send them a weed ticket, not a ticket, but a notice to cut the weeds if they're underneath them like that.
Okay. Even though they're registered, you can do that.
Oh yeah, because it'd be a weed. It wouldn't be a trailer violation. It would be a weed violation. Cause the weeds are over 6 inches. Well, 6 inches is what it says. In actuality, if they're over a foot, we worry about them. So that would be a weed issue. So that you wouldn't have to worry about the camper. That wouldn't have anything to do with it, really.
As long as it makes your job easier, I think. Yeah.
It makes it easier, and like I says, it targets the people that people want to target. Not recreational users, and like I say, the guy that has cancer and stuff like that. It targets the people that are doing drugs and that kind of.
Right. I noticed the past couple of years we've had a lot of fires in these campers and motor homes too. So not only are they an eyesore, they're a liability.
Yeah, we're working on one right now that is I thought for sure, I went and checked yesterday, Sunday, when I heard the fire. I thought for sure that was it, because he's got Kent and I went by, and he's got not very safe. He's got a stove in there that's not real safe either. That's one of the ones I'm going to go after. Is if you guys give me the weapons I need, that's the first one I'm going to go after. Well, probably first two at once, two bad ones that I have.
Yeah, good deal. Good luck.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Goodall?
Yeah, I'm all for this and getting behind y'all and giving you the tools you need. I mean, we're making an effort to try to get things cleaned up, and this is one area that we definitely need to get taken care of. So good job on getting this ordinance up, and I'm fully behind this.
Ms. Ogletree?
The only question I had is that the ordinance that you're proposing, it looks like you're proposing to add a section 9 to it. Is that right? There's 1 through 8 under C right now, and then you're proposing to add section 9. But section 2, I think you said something about how you don't want to have to enforce the requirement that they be on hard surfaces, but that remains in there. So are you going to propose to delete section 2?
No, not really, because I mean, hard surfaces is kind of vague. I mean, if it's standing and it's not tipping over, it's on a hard surface. So hard surface isn't. I don't think we have to delete that. I mean, if it's upright and not tipping over, I assume that's what you mean by hard surface.
That was just my misunderstanding. I thought that's something that you all had been discussing.
No, that's really not an issue. I mean, how do you define hard surface? Is it concrete, or a hard surface is something that would support the trailer, I would imagine. So if it's being supported, if it's tipping over, we got to do something about it. So we could still do the hard surface part. That's not a problem.
Okay. Mr. Shu, are you on?
Yeah.
Okay, any questions?
No, I think it's a good idea, and let's hope we can get it going and get everything cleaned up.
Okay. Mr. Williamson? he may not be on. Okay, I'll go on with my questions I have. A couple of questions that I have is, you have 48 hours to move a recreational vehicle from where it's at. And to me, that sounds like that's a little bit too short of a time. Personally, I would like to see double that or greater, because people have a tendency to just be able to say, well, we'll move it forward to my neighbors for 24 hours or 48 hours, and then they'll move them back, and then it just becomes a ping pong. So I think that the longer that you put in there, I think they're more likely it would take for them to make sure that they move it. So that would be one consideration that you may want to change to probably like 96 hours at least, or maybe at least that.
Okay, that one's on the street, so we're not talking about trailers on the street. 48 hours on the street, we can deal with that. This is just on private property. This ordinance is really concerned with. It's the ones on private property are the ones that are harder to go after. The street, 48 hours, and generally, if I don't blast them for 48 hours unless they're a traffic hazard. So I give them a week, and then I tag them with the 48-hour deal, and I give them a week to move them. Just because I realize sometimes they're hard to move. You get snow and stuff like that. So it is 48 hours, but there is a problem on the streets that they could move them back, and it's hard to. Maybe that's something we need to look at different, but that's a whole different. That's a whole different deal, because that we're dealing with the ones on private property right now. Those are the big problem ones. The ones on the street, I can tag them. They're easy to get rid of. So.
Okay, well. Take a look at that and see if there's any change that you guys want to do. The other thing that I had is, once in a while, unfortunately, there is a family that maybe has a disaster, whether it be a fire or if it's a natural disaster of anything that would occur, that maybe the family has a mobile home, a recreational vehicle that they're living in. How would you work something like that?
Well, right now there's a few, because of the COVID, there's a few first responders that are living in them. Now we can dance around that. And generally, if they're on the property with a relative or something like that, that would probably cover that. If you want to write something into extenuating some kind of circumstances, but I think I can work around that. I haven't really ran into that other than a few first responders, but that you got to take that into consideration. So.
Yeah, I think in the eventuality that something like that happened, that might be something that maybe you can get with, staff to see if they want to put something like that into that same ordinance. The main thing that I want to mention is that the policing of this, and I'm getting a little concerned with some of our ordinances sometimes that puts a lot of additional pressure on you guys for policing, and we just don't want to put additional pressure on you guys to have new ordinances that you're hard to police. So going in the future, I think that we need to really consider whenever we bring up a new ordinance. So just to let you know, I'm looking at that as we move forward.
Actually, the changes to that ordinance makes it easier, because right now, if I tag one, I'm liable to get 15, 20 people the people that we're trying to write out of the ordinance. This would makes it easier to go after those people. That's one of the problems I have. If I tag one of these people that are dealing drugs and living in trailers that don't belong to them, they're liable to go around and give me 15 or 20 that are upstanding citizens that just happen to have hunting trailers and that. So the changes that I want in this ordinance actually helps relieve the police of having to deal and weed that out. So it would actually help in that matter.
Okay, that sounds good then. This answers my question. Any other questions from council? Well, we're on that subject. Okay, let's go on to item 2, nonprofit funding. And Mr. Valentine, do you want to take that on, or is Cheryl going to talk about that?
No, I'll take it on a little bit with help from everybody. So, We had this discussion regarding our marijuana tax and the 5% that is set aside for nonprofit agency support. Council, we had a good discussion back in November, I believe, and there was a lot of good ideas that came out of that. And one of them was to check with Trinidad Community Foundation to see if they were willing, or how they actually doled out I think we allocate them $10,800 yearly to kind of help nonprofits, and they have a grant kind of a process that they go through. We've invited Mr. Simpleman here to kind of explain that process for us, if he would. But there was also some discussion of, well, maybe that 5% is too much. There's a spreadsheet that you can see on it that was included in the packet, and I believe in 2019 we had $166,250 available. The discussion was brought up that maybe we can use that. I think it was Councilman Goodall who suggested to incentivize some businesses, to help some businesses out. So right now, as the resolution is written, it's 5% for agency funding, and if council would like to discuss that also on how we maybe split that up, come up with some incentives. But I'd like to give it over to Mr. Simpleman so he can explain what the Community Foundation, how they vet everyone through this process.
Sure. Sure.
Good.
Thank you. You know, if everybody can hear me, and first of all, I guess for some of you that don't know, I'll explain a little bit what the Community Foundation is, talk about our process and how we reach out to the community. And we've been doing this, I think 3 or 4 years, Mike, for the city, and it's worked out fine. It is a little work for us, but but it also helps. We know the nonprofits well, and we only deal with nonprofits, by the way. Anyway, the Trinidad Community Foundation was founded in 2006, and our mission is to improve the quality of life. And we talk about our 5 pillars: health and wellness, education, recreation, historical preservation, and communications. Now, there's a lot of people that do amazing things in those areas. So what we tend to do is, like in medicine, the medical or the health and wellness, we'll help the hospital. We've helped the hospital buy an X-ray machine, Good Samaritans, and stuff like that. And frankly, when you look at those 5 pillars, there's not much you can't put under those, as long as it's something worthwhile and good for the community. And in the past, actually, Mike, there were a couple times you gave us about $18,000 to dole out. We take a 10% fee just because it helps us out a little bit for the administration and that. So, we have rent to pay and all that stuff. So, but our process from an overview is we'll advertise, give it a couple of weeks for the submission of grant requests. We try to keep the grant request as simple as possible. This is not a contest. If somebody has difficulty filling out or not sure, we'll help them out. And I don't really know, I can't think of any single one that, where we've refused for the city grants, because the people understand full well that they have to have something meaningful to do. Once we receive the request, what we'll do is we'll vet it based on the criteria, and I can go over that first. You got to. It's only to support the city of Trinidad. As a community foundation, we support the county, but for the city grants, the grant request has to come from somebody within the city limits. So we review it, look at the criteria, make sure that it is a viable organization that can actually do what they want to do. We look at their budget, and then we rank we have a committee that'll go through and evaluate these and then come up with a recommendation. And then the recommendation comes to the board of directors, because it's the board of directors that reviews it. And every once in a while, the board may have a suggestion or two, minor of anything. And once we approve it, then we'll go to city council and we'll brief you. After all, it's the city's money, and we let the world know that. So we'll brief you, and as far as I'm concerned, the council should have final say on what we're suggesting. And then, and Audra will tell you, the administration of the grant, because that's what can be time consuming. But we have people. The main thing we want to know is that, number one, they did what they said they were going to do with the money, and we want to know that they spent the money properly. So that final report will come in and say, yeah, this is what we did, this is how we spent the money. And we haven't had a single case with city money where that's been a violation or anything. And by the way, I want to point out, Mayor Rico has been a member of the TCF since 2006. And you do not want to be standing in the doorway when you say we're going to talk city grant or city business, because he's out of there and he'll vote you over. So he's very conscientious and makes sure he recuses himself. He still doesn't know the results until you guys do. That's true. So, and we're, we have the way we've done business, and we want to be responsive to the city. And we're willing to, if anybody's got any suggestions or whatever, we're willing to listen to them, as long as it's consistent with our mission and the way we do business. That's fine. And we have to be very careful ourselves, because we are audited every year ourselves. We go through an audit process, so we have to do things right to maintain our 501c3 status. Does anybody have any questions or anything I can? And I do want to say, may I say one thing? I'm sorry. It doesn't seem like most of our grants are around a couple $1,000, $2,500, so it's not a lot of money. Nobody's. It doesn't pay for a nonprofit or that to survive, but the smaller nonprofits. And even some of the larger ones, we're a little bit larger, and I'm going to tell you, man, it's a struggle now, and they really do need, and we really look forward to getting that money to help out, and we do a lot. All the nonprofits do a lot for the city. I'm sorry I interrupted. Is that you?
Mr. Valentine, could you let us or tell us what kind of allocation that you and staff are looking at to TCF for distribution?
So, Mayor, like I said, the overall 5% in 2019 was 166,000. If we were to break that out in, say, 3% toward incentives and 2% toward nonprofits, that would be round numbers 100,000 and about 66,000 to nonprofits. But I'm open for discussion, suggestion. I know that the last time we did this process, and like Colonel Sippelman said, the grant process and vetting everything, that's a lot of work, and it takes some time. So I would suggest 3% to 2%, but that's just throwing a number out there.
Okay. May I say, Mike, let me say that we do have 10,000. This is not marijuana money, the city money, 10,200 from the city. Still that we're going to go through the process now. We've held back because of the COVID and stuff like that, but we're ready to move out on that. So we do have 10,260, I think it is, of the city money less our commission. So it'll be around 9,000 plus that will go out here soon with that. That's different from the marijuana.
It is budgeted. This is aside from marijuana. 10,000.
Right.
believe the number is 10,800.
I think it's 10,260 or something like that. I've got it here, and I'm sorry, I should have.
Sure.
Yeah, it's,
That's
I
all
think
right.
it's 10,000. Use that number.
Okay, let's go and get some questions from council. Ms. Grego, we'll start with you.
When you're talking, Mike, I have a question. When you're talking about the 3% incentive, give me an example of what you're talking about. 2% to nonprofits, just for no special occasion, just to give them for general operating expenses?
No, I would think it would have to be vetted through the TCF process. Through our process, there were several kind of rules that we had, but that would be toward nonprofits. Not necessarily have to give it all out, I guess, as requests come in. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. One of the things you might think about doing is setting up like a restricted fund, so that, in other words, you would send us whatever a pile of money, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, whatever $1,000, and then you sort of, being a restricted fund or even a donor advised fund, you could say, give $10,000, get 10,000, whatever, 2,000 SCRT or whatever. So then we would turn around and say, of course it's different now because now you're getting a request, but you could set up a donor advised fund that would operate somewhat that way. And Mr. Gray, we normally don't give for operations because that's hard. It's more for projects or something.
Right.
And it turns out for nonprofits, the hardest money to get is the operating funds. But we normally don't fund operating funds.
I'm usually pretty liberal in my thoughts, but when it comes to money, I'm very conservative, and I don't see 166 going out to nonprofits, and I'm sure it's more 2020 because the pot shops, the cannabis industry had a huge increase. I'd like to see maybe 2% tops, and then let TCF take care of that 2% instead of the 5%.
Correct. So that 2% of the 166, I believe, if my math is correct, and I know Cheryl's online, so if she wants to jump in and correct me, I believe it'd be around 66,000 for nonprofits, and then we'd have about 100,000 should council decide to go toward an incentive type program. And then before we incentivize everybody, Wally has started to look at, we'd have to have some criteria for incentivizing. It wouldn't be just, here's some money, go do what you can. We're going to have that criteria set up. And I hit Wally with this a while back. We have somewhat of a kind of incentive policy, but we never had money. Now we have money, and so we're going to try and define that criteria a little better, and it'll be brought before council before staff does anything. So
I just don't think those large amounts that we gave in the past, it's not fair for, we don't have enough money, for number one, to give everybody large amounts. And I think if we give everybody that's vetted and that can qualify, if we give them a small amount, I think that would be the better way to go. I'm still concerned about what we're going to do in the future, what we're going to have to look at as far as where we're going to spend that money. This is a long haul deal, economic disaster actually, with all these local businesses and stuff. So I would like to be really conservative with money. That's all.
Okay, Mr. DeBono?
Oh, well, I just had maybe a question for Colonel. Colonel, we've had some interviews with you at the radio station. Has there been more volunteer donated time this past year with the pandemic as opposed to years past?
No, it's really been tough, Eli. Even just because you can't even get together for a doggone meeting. We were normally having the river cleanup, and that was we couldn't do that. That's always that's one of our signature things. We wanted our little. We had Santa Fe Trail Days. We had our bicycle event. We're going to go out there, and I talked to Wally about joining that. So the answer is no. It's been a tough year for all of the nonprofits. And we haven't been able to hold any fundraisers either. It's really tough. Now, Trinidad people are very, very generous. They're very generous with their time, their talent, and their treasure. The 3 T's, their money. But this has been a tough year for us. So,
Mr. Gray, Mr. Goodall?
So, Mr. Simpleman, what's the largest grant that you do give out? The largest amount someone can request?
We've limited it to about 2,500. And one of the things you might consider, and I understand Mrs. Grago's concern, we could have 2 grant periods. In other words, give half now, and then towards the end of the year, give another something like that. If you want to do it. Mike, does all of this money have to be spent within? How's that? Do we have any leeway in spending money? Can we carry that over to a couple fiscal years? I can't remember.
Yeah, Cheryl, do you have anything to add to that question?
If council writes or if the city writes a check to TCF, it's really out of our hands at that time.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Thanks, Cheryl. That's what I thought. So that gives you some flexibility, if you wanted to break it. It's a little bit more work for us. But on the other hand, frankly, if we're talking $66,000, that's a good sum of money for, and I think we might be better off breaking it into 2 pieces, 2 parts, and then, people, it's there. People, we could still have the same kind of controls,
I think we should have some sort of consideration for a special events. Some, like the Santa Fe Trails 200th anniversary or Blues Fest, some events that require a little more money, possibly having a exception on the amount of grants we give to them. When I brought this up about changing this split up on 3% to the incentives is phenomenal. I am for that 100%. And on those incentives, I think they should be directed to the building industry and our housing shortages. I would love to see most of the incentives used in that, or business startups, but they could be used to offer taps and different stuff like that to give incentives to builders to get in to build houses and stuff like that. So just an idea. You said you spoke with Wally about getting that in there. That's where I was looking at in the building industry to getting houses built. What can we do to get people to build more houses? And those incentives could definitely be used for taps. So the city's not out that money giving them away. This money could reimburse the city for that. So that's the only 2 things I have. Maybe an exception for large events that may require a little more money, a little more help. And I'd like to see the incentives directed more towards the building industry to take care of our housing shortage. That's all I have.
Would it be possible for me to comment on that?
Sure.
I just wanted to say that I absolutely 100% agree with Rusty. That's my main feelings on it as well. Like, I think the biggest issue we're going to be facing over the next couple of years is actually just getting people to invest in property improvements and to build enough housing for the workforce and the people that are coming into our community. So I would like to see a big focus on that as well. As Mike and I were digging through the code recently, we found a section in there for affordable housing, where it says that we will offer waivers on taps and breaks on getting taps done when finances allow for that. And this seems like a time where those type of stimulus payments could be made. In addition to the housing and the building improvements, which actually on that I will also add ADA accessibility grant. That's something that has been on the books. It's something for us to do for a while to help make more of our buildings appealing to people who are looking to move into them by making them more ADA accessible. But as far as the events go, I do agree that it'd be good. And it's hard to say that during this year of COVID, but going forward, if there's a way for us to help bring events, but specifically, I would like to see some way to focus more energy on the months that traditionally our hotels are not as occupied and that our sales tax revenue is lower. For example, if you're going to throw an event during the summer or peak season, you have less of an incentive to do it during those times rather than doing one in January, February, March, where it's proven that we have a much slower sales season. So I'd like to say those. And then also in addition to all that, last year when I gave the economic development presentation to you all, I passed on several incentive programs that were started by Jonathan Taylor that are not actually us giving cash stimulus to anybody, but are tax abatements, tax breaks for businesses that are coming and employing a certain amount of people and paying those people a certain level of wages. And I think that it'd be really good for us to move forward on those, as those won't actually cost us anything directly out of our city budget, but we will only see a decrease in that revenue if those people are making a lot of revenue, which means that they'll be here longer and be able to pay us more in the future. But yeah, I just wanted to chime in just because.
Okay, let me interject here a little bit. We're kind of getting away from some of the discussion that we're supposed to be having to some degree. We're looking at outside funding agency dollars, and we're talking about incentives and kind of getting a little deep into the incentive. Now, I think the big thing that needs to happen is that staff needs to come up, along with Mike, the break of the 2 or 3%, however it needs to go, and then bring it forward. So that, because I think the incentive one is going to be a much deeper discussion going in the future, and that's. But I think Mike, between you and staff, to come up with that's 2% for nonprofit, at least then we'll have an idea, and then if it's a 3% or 5% for however it is for incentives, then we'll take a deeper dive into that. So let's kind of stay on track with the outside funding on some of this stuff. So let's go on with Ms. Ogletree.
One thought that comes to mind for me about this whole issue is accountability, because this is tax money that the city is managing on behalf of the city. And for us to delegate that money to TCF, I think there's something about that seems a little tough to me. I know people come to me and they talk to me all the time about things they'd like to see the city contribute to. And so I think what we're saying by this is that don't talk to me, go talk to TCF. That's where you're going to present your case. And I don't know if maybe that's appropriate. I'm not really sure how I sort that all out. I know that the idea behind all this is that we wanted to get the burden of managing the money off of our staff, and that's a really understandable consideration. But I think we should have some way that we're following this money at least fairly carefully and know how it's being used and get reports back, so that we make sure that whatever it is that we thought that the city should do with the money is being done. But it doesn't sound like we're handing it to them, or we would be handing it to them with any strings attached, and other than that they use it for nonprofits, other than that they, don't waste it or anything like that. But I just want to think that through a little bit more and see if there's anything else we need as a city council need to put in there that strengthens our accountability loop on this.
Mr. Valentine, do you have an answer to that?
So we get reports from TCF before they even issue any of these out. City Council gets that report. Because it's going to be, if we go this way, if council so decides, it'll be a little bit larger. Maybe we can discuss with the foundation on how they bring those forward. Maybe it'd be in-person meeting or something rather than just reports or something along those lines. But with probably maybe an agreement document in place, because I understand your concern.
Yeah, we would want that as well, by the way. That's why we started the process of going before council and reporting, what we're recommending. So, and with this amount of money, by the way, we want to take a little bit more time in evaluation stuff, because they can do more with it. The other ones are small for little projects. It's easier to evaluate, define, and by the way, we do give, the end of grant report that shows how they spent the money in that. So, and people have been very, very good, but that doesn't mean, you have to be vigilant. And we, we're not. It's not our money. It's the city's money, and it's the people's money, and that's the way we treat it. So.
Mike, can I interrupt? This is Cheryl.
Go ahead.
So I want to be clear that we're not just going to write a big $75,000 check at one time. It's going to come on a quarterly basis.
Good.
So, for example, first quarter of 2020 would have been $17,000. And then that's how it would be every quarter. Council would approve it through a resolution, and then we would write the check to TCF.
Okay, good to know. Any other questions, Ms. Ogletree? Okay, let's go on to Mr. Shu.
Yeah, I'm kind of for the 5% and the 3% for the incentives in that, because like Mr. Simpleman said, they haven't had a chance to raise funds or anything, and it's kind of been a tough time for everyone. And I think we can do that. The only question is on the incentives, is there going to be a locked amount what they can issue out?
Well, first, go ahead, Mr.
I mean, I'm just kind of curious. You mostly are to the nonprofits are 2,500. Would the incentives be higher?
The incentives,
I think it would be
the incentives
case
would be
by
a
case
different program.
I can't hear that. I mean, somebody was talking.
I was just going to say the incentive part would be strictly for the city to designate cars to.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's what I was curious. But I think, like I say, I think the 5%. I know it's just been a tough time, and we can always through the years change that out to a lower percentage if we can. But right now, with everything the way it is, and them unable to do fundraising and that, I think we need to help as much as we can with the nonprofits too. And that's all I have.
The only question I have, Colonel Simpleman, is that I said so far the foundation hasn't had anybody who has not turned in a report. But in the application process, is there a note in there that states that if a report is not turned in at the end of their cycle, that they will not be
eligible
in the future?
You know what? We've had one case, not this last year before last, where we had trouble dragging it out, and we finally got it. But the way we handled that was we threatened them. We said either submit it or you won't be eligible. But we can certainly make that, and we should make that part of the grant. The qualification. That's a good point. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Okay, Mr. Valentine, like I said, we'll put it in yours and staff's hands to come up with some dollar figures as the percentages to bring forward to council and for consideration. Is that clear enough, you think?
It is. I thank you for the discussion. So we'll work on something and bring it forward.
Okay.
This is Audra. I have just one quick question / clarification. Cheryl talked about the quarterly allocation of the funds, but we have what is 2020 marijuana money to have to deal with as well. So, Cheryl, I would assume that would be one disbursement to TCF if that's the direction council goes, correct?
So right now, what's been authorized for outside funding is we'll just say $87,800. So we need direction to know, are we going to split that up 3%, 2%, or is that whole 87 going to TCF? And that would be second and third quarter funding. And then of course, right around the corner, we're going to be talking about fourth quarter funding, which I estimate to be about maybe $30,000, possibly $40,000.
Well, I think from what I'm looking at is that I'd say just get with staff and Mike and see what your recommendations are. So when you bring it to council, we'll have an idea as to how we want to disperse or how we want to go forward with it. So, you know, one additional question I had earlier, and actually it's not a question, it's an additional thought. Colonel Simpleman mentioned about maybe a couple of grant cycles a year rather than one. And I think that may not be a bad idea for the simple reason is that things change throughout the year. So I think that would be a consideration for Foundation to move forward with as well.
I have a question. I'm sorry. Okay, so is it possible, because 87.8 is quite a bit over what that 2019, those figures that Cheryl gave us. What if we do 87.8, is it possible to take out 3% for incentives out of the 87.8 and then designate the fourth quarter 5% totally to incentives? Is it possible to do that by quarter, or you know what I'm saying? Because that's quite a bit for that third quarter.
I think staff will work on that. I agree. That's not being conservative at all.
No.
As far as you're concerned, I get that. That's a lot of money to just say here. So we'll work on something. I'd like to have the resolution clear moving forward. Maybe we could put a certain amount of this in there for this like seed money to get the grant program going through TCF, and then as we crunch the numbers, definitely that's a lot of money to put that direction. So yeah, I'd like to have a clear resolution going forward. We've massaged this resolution several times, and we can do that again, but I think we're getting down to refining it. So.
Okay, I guess let's go ahead and go on the other one. Colonel Simpleman, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colonel.
Okay, on to item 3, discussion regarding new MED rule that allows walk-up and drive-up service. Les, I guess that would be you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of council. What you have before you in your materials, what is marked as number 3, of course, for the third agenda item, are new rules from VMED. Now, these new rules allow drive-up and walk-up windows at medical and retail marijuana facilities. And we wanted council to have a conversation about what you thought of those ideas. I know that city staff was approached by various marijuana store owners to have you express kind of what your viewpoint on this subject might be. And there are a number of things, a number of requirements that, and by the way, I do want to say that there is one facility that already has kind of a walk-up window, and that is THCU. Did I get that abbreviation correct? Okay. So they have a walk-up window, I mean, it is all, you know how it goes out there. I think you can see it from the highway. It's a big facility, and they have a big fenced-in front area there, which is all their property. And I just want to emphasize that point, because if you were to allow this, anyone who would be permitted to have a drive-up area or a walk-up, they have to own the property where the drive-up or walk-up would be. So if you had, space, if you had a road on the side of your building, your facility, then you would be allowed to have a drive-up, right? You couldn't have a drive-up that had public space or space that you didn't control. Same thing with a walk-up. If you were going to do this, you couldn't have a public sidewalk right in front of a facility and then have a walk-up window at that facility. They have to own the property where that would be contemplated. So in the first half of your materials, it goes, just so you know, that this rule, this part 5, it begins really under letter K, and that is for medical marijuana facilities. Then going a little further in, I think it's page 6 of your materials for retail marijuana facilities, it is paragraph J that talks about the requirements and what would have to be, what people would have to do. And I just, one last point, and that is all the identification requirements would be the same. The recording, the tracking, they would have to provide their identification, not only to make sure they're of sufficient age, but also, if they're an in-state resident, out-of-state resident, just all those kinds of things, that would remain the same, even though the manner would be different. And of course, the argument is that this is appropriate and necessary during a pandemic. But I said that would be my final point, and so I'm being quiet now.
Mr. Downs, there's something else before I turn it over to the ballot to the rest of the council.
Yes, sir.
That I read into these new rules, and I don't know if I can understand this part of the drive up or walk up, and that's pretty clear. But in there, it also talks about the delivery. Is that going to be a totally different issue that we're going to have to deal with, or is it all part of it? Is this all?
Well, it is an issue that you can deal with. We're kind of giving this to council in a piecemeal fashion. So that's another one, Mayor, and we can talk about that on another occasion. But that's not part of this that we're asking you to consider now.
Okay, that you answered my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Grego.
Les, when you talk about this change was COVID inspired, but they're permanent, right? They're not going to go away once COVID is gone, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
When we got our information, I tried to do a survey of all the cannabis shops in Trinidad, and there's a lot of them that are landlocked, and especially on West Main and Commercial Street. But some of the bigger ones that are outside that Corazon, Trinidad, this interior of Trinidad, I think would be ideal for a situation like that. I kind of do the litmus test. Is it okay for liquor establishments to do this?
Right.
So if it's okay for liquor establishments to do this, I believe the marijuana industry should have the same consideration. Cannabis in Trinidad has done wonders for this community. They're not an industry that has been causing issues. They're law-abiding. They conduct business in a professional manner, and they've done so much for talking about $1 million were given away to other businesses and private individuals. I think If it's something that the cannabis industry should use and the state's fine with it, I'm fine with it as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. DeBono?
Well, curbside takeout and paying for weed online were both illegal until the governor's executive order issued in March of, I think it was March 22nd. The Marijuana Enforcement Department, you know, what I have to say is, if it's going to be a walk-up or drive-through, many of the dispensaries are going to have customers have to order ahead of time when they go through drive-through pickup. You know, when they give their ID, their identification cards via video. Many of the dispensaries have high-resolution cameras outside, and some of the arguments against it would be probably a spike in driving accidents, but this may not be necessarily true because it makes it more vital for medications accessible to patients who need them with issues with multiple sclerosis or seizures. So it might be a fundamental necessity, even though even before the COVID-19, I predicted years ago that this was going to happen. So I don't see any issue with walk-up windows other than more security. And people are going to drive to the dispensary anyway, so why not make it easier in the own privacy of their own vehicle?
Okay.
So another issue I would think is you're going to have to give the bud tenders 30 minutes or more to spend on a customer to exactly know what they want. They're going to have to call ahead of time, especially a first-time purchaser. They're going to have to call ahead of time because it's going to take that long in drive-through. So you're going to have a plethora of cars lined up all the way back to who knows where to make sure that they get exactly what they want. So that might be a deterrent.
Well, I think they could call ahead, Councilman, but they have to have a menu,
Right.
like a drive-up restaurant, right? So that they could drive up, see them. Of course, they can't have any product on display.
No.
But they would have a menu, so you could drive up and order, you know, I guess a quarter ounce of your preferred weed or whatever. I mean, I don't know that it would be a really time-consuming transaction. I want to say something funny like, but I've got nothing.
I think McDonald's, how many people in front of you or behind you take forever? All they want to order is a Happy Meal, and then you take 15 minutes.
You're right. And if they don't have the fries made, and right. But I mean, if you're just pulling up and you're getting a certain measure of, you know, your kind of marijuana, I don't think it would take that long. I think Mike is looking at me like, Les, you're going too far down the rabbit hole. Yes, I get it.
And anyway,
I'm not even looking at Audra. I'm not even looking at
any illegal activity done by the customer away from the dispensary is not the responsibility of the dispensary anyway.
Correct.
So
if it's done away from the dispensary, I'm sorry.
Cannabis is illegal throughout the country.
Right.
Okay, Mr. Goodall?
So, you know, we're only talking about, as Les said, THCU has been doing the walk-up window ever since, and that's who holds my medical to grow my marijuana for me. So I frequent that facility for my medicine, and it allows them to better service their customers because they have the limited space inside. One person can go in, so now they have two places and they can move through the customers quicker. Other than THCU, we're looking at Freedom Road at the Brickyard. We're looking at out in Industrial Park and possibly West Main, maybe 4 facilities that own the property to even do this. So I don't see this as going to be an issue whatsoever. Most patients who don't know what they want are more than likely going to go up to the walk-up window where the menus are posted that they can choose from anyway. So I think that we're not going to see an issue with this whatsoever, is my personal opinion.
Okay. Ms. Ogletree?
I'm comfortable that all the points have been discussed. I don't have anything further. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Shu?
I kind of agree with Rusty, and I have no questions either.
Okay. You know, this entire industry is evolving, and every time we turn around, it's something new. And I think this is, you know, as far as I'm concerned, this is fine. Like I said, you know, as far as those businesses that are not able to offer that drive-up facility, they're just going to have to figure out amongst themselves or individually how they're going to continue to try to, you know, meet the marketing and everything else to with those that have the drive-up facilities. So I think it's fine. I'm fine with it. I think it's a good idea, actually. Any other thoughts?
I did not think you guys were going to be unanimously in favor. I thought this was going to be a little more controversial.
Yeah.
Shows you what I know.
Right.
Thank you. Don't agree. Don't agree. Just kidding.
Okay, let's go on to item 4, discussion of memorandum of understanding with Trust for Public Lands regarding GOCO grant for Fisher Peak planning. Mr. Valentine.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I thought I would be able to have an MOU in front of you for discussion. It's not prepared yet. I'm working with Wade Shelton with Trust for Public Lands. What we're talking about on this memorandum of understanding is, when this whole first thing started and they needed a planning grant to talk about what to do with Fisher's Peak land, GOCO, TPL, and Nature Conservancy applied for a grant through GOCO on behalf of the city of Trinidad. The city of Trinidad put in $10,000 for that. Council approved that way back. Trust for Public Lands and Nature Conservancy put in $25,000, and then there's a $75,000 GOCO grant. Well, a lot of stuff has happened since then, and it's moved to the point where they're needing to expend the funds, request draws from GOCO for the planning, and TPL and Wade want to have a memorandum of understanding so that all bases are covered. So again, I apologize that it's not here, but it's a pretty generic memorandum of understanding that explains what happened, how much is left. Some of that money we signed a contract, council approved with actually the CSU students for roughly $36,000, but they, with COVID, have not been able to do anything, so they've not requested that. The remainder that TPL and DNR are going to request is around $46,000, maybe a little more once we're working on the numbers and all that. So I thought I was going to have something for you to have a look at, but for now, I just give you a heads up that it's coming your way. Council approved way back when, it might be a year and a half or longer ago, that you approved $10,000 matching for this grant. So I'll answer any questions if there is any.
The only question, just to start off with, is do you think that you would have that memorandum of understanding by the meeting next week, or would it be after that?
I would hope that we have it and I could put it on the agenda for recommendations. Like I said, it's just we are the managing the grant, and so I don't foresee any problems with it.
Okay. So, well, if you can get it to us, like I said, for this next meeting on next Tuesday, that'd be good. If not, we move it on. Well, anyway, let's see if there's any questions from Ms. Grego.
I have none.
Okay, Mr. DiBono?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor. No questions at this time.
Mr. Goodall?
Nothing for me.
Okay, Ms. Ogletree?
Nothing, Mayor. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Shu?
No, nothing.
Okay, and I already made my comment, so let's just see if we can get that MOU in front of us, and we'll move forward with it. Okay. Okay, last thing is, of course, discussion of agenda items. Does council have any other additional items that they would like to bring forward for future items to discuss? Ms. Grego?
No, I keep saying it. I'd like to see maybe fine-tuning some of the the code enforcement issues that we've had, not issues, but recommendations from the police department. You know, this is one segment with the RVs, but I think there's other fine tuning that we can do with some of those to try and speed up the process.
Okay. I know that you and Ms. Ogletree were the ones that met with the PD. Maybe you need to get together with Mike to come give him your ideas, and then he can get together with staff to come up with something to bring forward to council.
Mike was there that day too with Chief and Officer Haddam. Yeah.
If there's any additional fine tuning that you guys need to add to that, so Mr. DeBono?
Nothing to present, sir. No.
Mr. Goodall?
No, the one thing I was going to bring up was this 5% of the marijuana money. So it looks like we got that covered. So I can't think of anything else right offhand.
Okay, Ms. Ogletree?
Morning, I was invited to a Zoom meeting by Jeff Peterson, he's involved with our Space to Create Oversight Board and the Creative District, and he's also deeply involved with Wally Wallace in economic development concerns. So this meeting was with him and with a woman, Lindy. I've lost her last name, but she's in Raton, and she's either the vice mayor down there or the incoming mayor of Raton. The meeting was about workforce development, and Jeff has a program that he's been investigating that he'd like our city and Raton to work together on to contribute to financially, that would provide a broad range of online training for our workforces. And in particular, some hospitality training. One of the things that came up, like we talked about at another work session, about our readiness, is our workforce development, specifically in the area of hospitality, but also in lots of other concepts that this would assist and make available to our workforce training that their employers would contribute to, their municipalities would contribute to, so that we have a way to prepare people. In any event, Jeff would like to make a presentation to City Council about it sometime within the next 30 days, and I mentioned that I would let him know that I would present that tonight.
So would you call that, Jeff, on economic development? Is that what you'd like to call it?
Yeah, I think so. It's for small business workforce development.
Small business.
And he'll do a far better job explaining all the details of it. It's a well thought through program, and I think pretty cost effective. And it would be useful to be able to offer that to people in the workforce here and entering the workforce.
Okay. Mr. Shu, do you have anything to bring forward in the future?
No, I sure don't. Not at this time, Phil.
Okay. The one thing I just wanted to mention is a couple of things, actually. A while back, as everyone knows, Jeff Shoemaker from the Greenway Foundation gave us a presentation, and he said that he would get us a proposal, which he has done. I don't know if I know, Mike, did you pass that on to everybody yet, or not yet?
I have not yet, Mayor. I just printed it today, so I haven't even looked at it, but I will pass it on and get it to everyone to take a look at.
What I've been in contact with him, and I told him that we could probably get him on another work session on the 25th. That way he can actually do the presentation for us and have any questions that we may have. So we'll do that. The other thing is this Friday, Ms. Grego, I'm going to need you to, and I'll talk to you. There's a CML meeting that I cannot make because I've got something else I've got to be attending to that day. So I don't know if you need to sign up, but I'll call you tomorrow and talk to you.
Okay.
If you could cover that for me on Friday.
I will.
Okay. That's all that I have at this point in time. So we will now exit the work session.
Mayor, if I may?
Sure.
Real quick. Couple announcements for the next meeting. Well, one is hopefully council knows there's a letter of support for a Bar and I grant application for fuel mitigation up in our watershed. no matching. They just needed that letter of support, and it was due previous to this meeting. So we went ahead and sent that on. Like I said, no matching, and it'll definitely help our watershed in that. Secondly, and I know we're a bit rushed for getting the special meeting going, but our South Central Planning Region for CDOT, the Transportation Planning Region, we have not had a official representative on there since Mr. McKay left that. Council person Aaron Williamson is on that board as a representative from the city on the Southern Colorado Council of Governments, but we need to have an official appointment to the TPR, and I will have that on the agenda for January 19th, as they're going to have a transportation meeting on January 28th. So just wanted to let council know that.
Okay, so if anybody wants to be considered, let me know, or let us know when we have that, when it comes up. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you, Mayor.
Anything else? Les, do you have anything that you're going to bring forward?
Well, Mayor, I still owe you guys my mural ordinance, but I don't have anything, and I'm going to get a draft of that to staff in the near future, so they can look over it and we can talk about that and then bring it to council. But I don't have anything that I'm wanting to add. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and exit the work session and move on to our special meeting. So we do have a special meeting now starting up. Like I say, today is Monday, January the 11th, 2021. The time is now 6:13. So the special meeting of the City of Trinidad will now come to order. Could I have a roll call, please?
DeBono.
Here.
Goodall.
Here.
Griego.
Here.
Ogletree.
Here.
Shu.
Here.
Williamson. Rico.
Here. Okay, on to item 1, approval of bills. That would be the COVID relief payments. Could I have a motion?
Move.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Starting with Ms. Gregel.
I just have a question. Staff vetted all these businesses, correct?
Correct.
Okay. No, I have no questions.
Okay, Mr. Bono?
No, sir. No questions. I just looked over the 2021 budget, but no, I don't have any questions about the approval of bills.
Okay, Mr. Goodall?
Nope, good job, staff, on getting this to us and so we can get it out there.
Okay, Ms. Ogletree?
No questions. I just wanted to say that it does my heart good to look at all these businesses. They all have warm places in my heart, and I'm just thankful that they're getting help, and it's like we're investing in our community and not letting them die, and that's it.
No questions.
Okay, and Ms. Gregel, of course, she asked the question I had, was want to make sure that everybody that was out there, if they were all vetted, that they should receive the aid. So that was the only question that I had. So if there are no other if there's no other discussion, call the vote.
Bono.
Yes.
Goodall.
Yes.
Griego.
Yes.
Ogletree.
Yes.
Shu.
Yes.
Rico.
Yes. Item 2, transfer of ownership of a fermented malt beverage off-premises liquor license filed by CF Altitude LLC, doing business as Alta number 6255 at 305 State Street, formerly Peaster Marketing Company, and set for a public hearing at 6 p.m. on February the 16th, 2021. Have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And I guess first of all, I forgot, do we have a Mr. Shoemaker who's the authorized signatory? Is he listening in tonight?
Your Honor, if I could please, we have legal counsel instead. The well-dressed, non-retired lawyer in the chat area is Mr. Kevin Coates, and he represents the applicant. I hope that is sufficient. I told him it was good.
It is, unless I'm going to turn it over to you if you have any questions for Mr. Coates.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I do not have any questions. Mayor, I would ask the council to please set the transfer of ownership hearing for the February 16th date, and to please grant the temporary permit allowing them to be in business and doing business with their temporary liquor license to begin on February 14th, when I am told January 14th. Thank you. January 14th, when they are going to be in possession of the premises. So there are really two items, but I would ask for the granting of the temporary permit and then setting the transfer of ownership for the hearing on February 16th.
Okay, we'll bring that up. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get any questions from council. Ms. Grego?
I have no questions. I'm just assuming it's a corporate ownership change, or is it a corporate name change?
Mr. Coates?
It's an ownership change. So ownership essentially is changing by two companies coming into a joint venture. It's Fortress Investment and Phillips 66.
Okay.
And I did want to just say, my name is Kevin Coates. Thank you for having me here tonight. Appreciate Ms. Garrett and Mr. Downs' assistance and help with respect to getting this matter on so quickly as we are asking for the temporary permit to issue on Thursday. And he did indicate well-dressed. He's an observant guy in the sense that this is a brand new jacket. So thank you. Appreciate you folks. Thank you.
Mr. DeBono?
No, transfer of ownership shouldn't be an issue. I have no questions, Mr. Mayor.
How about Mr. Goodall?
I have nothing, Mayor.
How about Ms. Ogletree?
No questions, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Shu?
No questions.
I have no questions. Call a vote, please.
Bono,
Yes.
Goodall,
Yes.
Griego,
Yes.
Ogletree,
Yes.
Shu,
Yes.
Rico.
Yes. Item 3, temporary permit application for a fermented malt beverage off-premises liquor license filed by CF Altitude LLC, doing business as Alta, number 6255 at 305 State Street, where they will be allowed to for the temporary permit to take place or to start on January the 14th. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Any discussion? Call the vote, please.
Bono,
Yes.
Goodall,
Yes.
Griego,
Yes.
Ogletree,
Yes.
Shu,
Yes.
Rico.
Yes. Mr. Coates, we will see you then on February the 16th, around 5 o'clock. I'm not sure where you will fall in line as far as the item, but we'll see you on the 16th. Thank you for appearing.
For clarification, is it 5 or 6 o'clock on the
6 o'clock. 6 o'clock.
No problem. Thank you very much. And Ms. Garrett, I assume will issue the temporary administratively now. Is that the process for Thursday?
You're correct.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Folks, really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you on the 16th of February.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Take care. Good night.
Good night.
Item 4, of course, adjournment. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Call the vote, please.
Bono,
Yes.
Goodall,
R. Yes.
Griego,
Yes.
Ogletree,
Yes.
Shu,
Yes.
Rico.
Yes. Okay, see you next Tuesday.
How about the cool echo chamber effect by Kimberly?
Yeah.
Cool. You know, when she takes roll. We worked on that very hard. No, just kidding. Good night, everybody.
Good night.